What is up, folks? I am Kevin Iole, and I'm pleased to be joined right now by one of the best trainers in the world, and the guy I think you're going to see on television for boxing fights in the near future because this guy knows his stuff and he really explains it very well. Of course, I'm talking about Stephen Breadman Edwards. Bread, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Big fight on Friday in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Anthony Joshua, the former unified heavyweight champion, he will be taking on the former UFC heavyweight champion, Francis Ngannou. We got a chance to see Francis box one time. His pro debut at 37 years old against Tyson Fury on October 8th. He loses a split decision in that fight. A lot of people thought he should have won it. I actually had Fury winning that fight, but it was a close fight. He dropped Fury in the third round of that one. Brett, so let's start right there. What was your take on Ngannou? It's his pro debut. He's 37 years old. He fought the best heavyweight in the world. What was your take on how he looked in that fight?
I was very impressed. I really was. He did some good stuff, and besides the technical stuff that he did, he showed a lot of composure in, dealing with the last few rounds of the fight where Fury was kind of trying to come on. A lot of times where a guy doesn't have that much experience, but he's athletic or he's strong, the more experienced fighter are kind of like carry him a little fast and try to like wait for him to slow down a little bit. And so when the fatigue set in, he showed good composure. He showed good conditioning. Um, he showed the ability to navigate through. It wasn't a 12-round fight, if I'm not mistaken. It was a
And
10
Robert.
round fight.
Yeah.
But he showed some good stuff, man. And he had a real case for winning that fight. As you watching the fight as enjoying it, I wasn't scoring it, but my naked eye told me that fight was razor close.
Yeah.
And if he won 5 rounds, if you found a way to give him 5 rounds, then you think he won the fight because he
Knockdown.
scored the knockdown. So mathematically, you get the 10-8 round for that. And if he would have won that fight, I would have not had one issue with it. I was very, very impressed. He was also um, a lot of it's a natural reaction to close your eyes while you're getting hit. Everybody does it if you're not used to getting hit. Even if you are used to getting hit, you close your eyes. And he had the unique ability. You could tell he has natural fighter instincts because he was punching with Fury. So when he knocked Fury down, he was like, I don't know if it was like a martial arts move or karate move or MMA or what, but he was like doing some unique stuff. He threw some different punches. One time he like flew in the air and like came down on top of his head and he was punching with them. He can fight. You know what I mean? He definitely can fight. I don't want to overrate him on one performance because you never know how serious Fury took the fight, and I don't want to discredit Ngannou. So there's a lot of things that you have to factor in. But for that, the first time to be the first time that he got in the boxing ring and the fight, probably the best heavyweight of this era, that was a tremendous showing. And Fury is fortunate to come away with the win because
And that he was, no doubt.
it would it would have been really embarrassing to lose to a guy in his pro debut.
Oh, big time. He would have kept the title because it was a non-title fight, but still. So let's spring from that into the Joshua fight. And how much do you think, you got to imagine Joshua watches that fight and he's not going to be surprised by anything now. He's going to be prepared, I would imagine, for a guy that, is at the top of the food chain, right? He's got to think Francis Ngannou is as good as it gets. So how do you think what Joshua saw against Fury will impact what he does against Ngannou?
Well, I think that Joshua is in a more beneficial situation because he can't get caught by surprise from Ngannou's ability because he just saw him. Let's just say it was a pick 'em type of fight as far as who you thought won. So he won't get caught by surprise. There's video out on him now. People know what his tendencies are. All those things matter when you're talking about a fight.
Right.
Um, so the surprise factor will be gone. So um, Joshua has a good team around him. He has Lee Wylie, who makes a lot of videos in boxing, and Ben Davison. So I'm sure they've been studying Ngannou.
Derek James is still consulting with him.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that. Okay, that's great. Because Derek James, one of my favorite trainers, I didn't know he was still in the picture. So that's even better, you know. So uh, I think Joshua will be more prepared. He won't be caught by surprise by anything. And you know, he looked good in his last fight. You know, I thought his last fight, I thought the guy that he fought, he should have fought him before he fought Usyk instead of afterwards,
Yeah.
because he would have been prepared for the tricky southpaw style. But nevertheless, he handled him. You know, stopped him, beat him up. I actually thought it was going to be a tougher fight than that, so I was impressed with him. And but I think that Joshua definitely has the advantage because now everybody knows that Ngannou can fight.
Right.
Now everybody knows that once the video gets out on you, you know, now you have to
All right.
be able to add layers to your game. You know how it is in the NFL. A guy will have a good season, then everybody have video on him, and then they get to study for him. So he's not going to be able to creep up on anybody anymore. So that's the advantage that Joshua has in this fight.
You know, Dewey Cooper, who trains in Ngannou, I've known Dewey since he was a fighter. I've known Dewey when he was a wide receiver at UNLV football about 30 some years ago. So Dewey has been around a long time, and I've had a relationship with him. And I talked to him the other day, and he said to me that he thinks Francis is going to be a completely different fighter. And a couple of things he mentioned was, you know, they worked so much on mistakes that he made, they felt he made the first fight, and also conditioning. Dewey said he wasn't sure he could go 10 rounds the last fight, so he kind of held him back a little bit. He kept the reins on him. He said this time he knows he can go 10 rounds. He can go 12 rounds if need be. And so Dewey is confident that AJ is going to see a much better Francis Ngannou. Do you think it is possible in that short a period of time, from October 28th until March 8th, you know, that's not a long period of time, for Francis to change so fundamentally?
Yes, it depends on what he's working on in the gym, how receptive he is of it, and who the teacher is. But obviously, he has natural fighters instincts. You know, he wasn't a boxer before, but he did some boxing. You could tell he knows his way around a boxing ring. I'm sure he sparred,
Right.
you know, at a high level. So is it likely? No. But is it impossible? It's not impossible. You can get better. And at this level, getting better 2-3% is a lot. It's a game of inches. It's a game of milliseconds. He corrects a couple of things here and there. I mean, the Fury fight was literally decided by one round. One
Yeah.
round here, one round there. And, you know, he's the toast of the boxing world. So he definitely can improve. Now, Willie, we don't know. These are two different fighters. And I personally think that Joshua uh, trains harder than Fury. I think he's a more dedicated athlete as far as his body is concerned.
Right.
So even though Fury is you know, rated above him, and if they stop fighting today, he will be considered the better fighter. I think Joshua takes boxing a little bit more serious than Fury. So I think Ngannou's gonna have to be better to beat Joshua. Not so much that he's a better fighter, it's just the surprise factor is gone. And that's a big deal. You know, people can say that they train the same for every fight, but mentally you're not the same when you don't feel the
Yeah.
threat. So you get a guy coming from MMA, never boxed before. Okay, a couple of rounds he might be strong, and then I'm gonna go ahead and knock this guy out. But it didn't work out that way. So Joshua is the kind of guy. He's a prideful guy. I respect Anthony Joshua because he's been knocked out. He's been embarrassed. He's had some subpar performances, but if you look at his resume, fighter for fighter, he has the best resume in the heavyweight division as far as fighter for fighter. He hasn't fought Fury and Wilder yet, but if you look at the guys he's fought in the top 10 undefeated fighters, threatening fighters, he got the best resume in boxing as far as heavyweight fighters are concerned. So I got a lot of respect for him. So I expect him to come in very well prepared. But Ngannou has something to work on because he fought a good fight. He didn't fight a perfect fight.
Right.
So he has room for improvement too. So I wouldn't be surprised if both guys raise the level of their games for this fight.
One of the things that struck me was, when Anthony Joshua fought Klitschko, I was so impressed by the heart he showed in that fight. And, I know anybody that steps in the ring is a brave guy and has a lot of courage, but, it was exceptional courage, I thought, against Klitschko, because you're talking about one of the great punchers of recent generations. He had so many title defenses, so many knockouts, and he put Anthony Joshua down, and he put him down hard. And he hurt him a couple other times. And AJ came back and was able to stop Klitschko late. And then, but he fought differently when he got hurt against Andy Ruiz, and I was a little surprised by that. And he seemed like even in the rematch against Ruiz, he fought cautiously. What do you make of those two differences, or am I overthinking it?
No, you're not overthinking it. There, when Anthony Joshua fought Klitschko, he had never really, you know, he was younger. When you're younger, you're more vicious. You're willing to go through more. That wasn't his first championship fight, but that was like his first big
No
Super
question.
Bowl kind of fight. And um, when it, usually when guys are in that moment, they put it all on the line. And he was hurt. That right hand hurt him. He was critically hurt, but he recovered. But what happened to him in that fight, he found out what it was like to be hurt and to be dizzy and disorganized mentally. And it seemed like he was a little gun shy, to be honest, after that fight. Like there's two. You remember when Hector Camacho got hurt by Edwin Rosario many years ago? His
Oh
career
yeah.
kind of changed. He wasn't really willing to go through that again. And one of the reasons why I give Ngannou a chance in this fight is because with Ruiz, Joshua, you know, Vladimir Klitschko and Lennox Lewis both, suffered some bad KOs early in their career. But both of those guys were great long range fighters, and they didn't mind making the fight a little bit boring. They would get on the end of their jab and hit you with right hands. And if they didn't knock you out, they didn't knock you out. But they punched hard enough where you just couldn't just walk up on them with immunity. You could get your head knocked off. So
Right.
they kind of kept you at bay in those situations. But with Anthony Joshua, he's a hooker and an uppercut guy. He loves hooks and he loves uppercuts. For him to be a tall guy with a big reach, he loves it. And to throw uppercuts and hooks, you got to throw a lot of those shots from the mid range. And that's why he got caught with that hook from Andy Ruiz. I think he was concussed when he got hit with the hook. It just took a couple of rounds to, for the fight to finally end. But there's good observations by you, Kevin, because he hasn't been the same as far as his viciousness, as far as his like cavalier attitude, willing to walk through the fire. You know, I thought he regained a little bit of it in
Against
the
Ruiz.
second Usyk fight. The second
Second.
Usyk fight, he fought harder. He fought he fought, more violently. He fought harder. You know, getting knocked out is embarrassing to fighters, and it's just something that, everybody's not willing to go through. Tommy Hearns and Terry Nars, those guys get knocked out and it's like they got short memories. They're like defensive backs in football. But everybody's not like that, and it's taken Joshua a while to get his mojo back. He's a smart guy. He's a cerebral guy. And
Yes.
guys like that, you know, I don't want to insult anybody, but sometimes guys that are like overthinkers and think like him, they don't get over things as fast. So he hasn't responded as far as like, being a seek and destroy guy the way some other guys have been. Klitschko was kind of like that. If you remember, Kevin, for him to be the puncher that he was, he was a very careful guy. There was a lot of guys that went the distance with him that shouldn't have went the distance with him. So it seems like Joshua is getting that back. But the problem is that his range is a little bit different than Klitschko's and Lewis. They were better long range guys. They could keep you on the end of their jabs all night. With Joshua, for whatever reason, he
Well, he's got
likes to
a
throw
big
the hooks.
bulging upper body, so you don't have that, length that
Yeah,
that those two guys had.
that could be it. And sometimes everybody just have a preference on the punches they like to land. And that's how he got caught versus Ruiz. Ruiz's hook was just shorter and more compact. So that's where I give Francis a chance to clip Joshua because Joshua likes it right there in the mid range. If you remember, Dillian White hurt him in there in the mid range. For whatever reason, he likes it there. And Francis Ngannou is a strong, dog strong, hard dude. Anybody that big and that explosive can hurt you. So that's the one area that I give him a chance to hurt Joshua. In the mid range. See, the thing about Fury, I don't think Fury has an indentable chin. He doesn't have an iron chin, but he has great recovery. Kind of reminds me of Juan Manuel Marquez, where you can knock him down, but it's hard to knock him out. There's certain fighters like that, where Fury goes down and he gets wobbled, but in order to stop him is just different. And Joshua hasn't shown me those kind of recovery powers. Usually when he gets hurt, he's hurt. Even with Klitschko, he was hurt for like 3-4 rounds. He was hurt. Yep. Andy Ruiz the same way. He was hurt for a few rounds before the stoppage came. So if Ngannou hits him high on the head with something on the temples, I will be curious to see if Joshua can fight through it because he hasn't shown the same kind of. All heavyweights get hurt. It's never been a great heavyweight that hasn't been hurt or been down. They're just too big. But everybody doesn't have the same recovery powers. You know, that's the big difference. You know, where Fury has really good recovery powers. You hurt him, and the next round he's fresh and he can function.
Were you thinking of the first fight with Wilder, where he went down in the 12th round and he got up and wins the rest of the round?
Yeah, he's really, really unique in that way. A guy from our gym back in Philly, Steve Cunningham, years ago, hit him with an overhand right and hurt him and knocked him down. And he got up to win that fight by stoppage. He has good recovery powers. And I'm not saying Anthony Joshua doesn't have them, but he hasn't shown that yet. Usually when he gets hurt, he kind of stays hurt. He did recover against Dillian White, but I don't consider Dillian White an elite heavyweight. I just think he's a good fighter. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a good fight.
Well, here's one thing that I want to throw at you because, like when you hear the names, you say, wow, that's really good. But I wonder if he's had too many, chefs in the kitchen because he was in the amateurs and most of his pro career, he was with Rob McCracken. And then, of course, McCracken started getting a lot of heat when AJ lost and people were wanting to blame McCracken. And so in the last couple fights, he's had Robert Garcia, he's had Derek James, Ben Davison. James is still consulting a little bit. And I wonder if that's too many people in his ear, right? Do you feel like, you have a lot of different things going on and a lot of people telling you their way of doing things and what you should do. As a trainer, do you want to train somebody who's had, 5 trainers or 4 trainers in 5 fights?
I went through that with a heavyweight fighter. You know what I mean? I went through that. He had a lot of trainers and, he was in his mid-30s when I started training him. And a lot of times those guys are kind of settled in their ways. But the fighter that I went through that with, he's not as far along or advanced as Anthony Joshua. It's not something that I would want to go through, but this is a business and, Ben Davison, he can't help when Anthony came to him for help. So he has to do the job that he has to do. I thought that took away from Oscar De La Hoya's career, even though I think Oscar is an all-time great fighter. There's tiers to being all-time great, but I think he could be higher up on the tiers if he wouldn't have changed trainers so much. I think that sometimes fighters, they don't allow themselves to grow with their trainers through adversity. And, there's really no right or wrong way to do things in boxing. It's whatever works. But every trainer has their own solution to a specific problem. And the way Robert Garcia may do things may be different than the way Derek James may do things. Derek James may do things a little bit different than the way Ben Davison does things. And under pressure and under tense moments where all of these things show up and you have to make split-second decisions in microseconds, just boom, you have to think of something. You don't want that many people telling you how to avoid a right hand, how to avoid a hook, how to avoid certain kinds of jabs, what to do when you're hurt, what punches to throw and what punches to not throw in certain situations. So whenever I see a guy switch trainers oftentimes elite level fighters can get away with it with the first couple of fights because what they do is they lock into the new guy. It's like the new teacher comes to the class. Everybody pays attention the first couple of weeks because they want to impress the new teacher. But what happens is over the course of time, you go back to your old ways. So we don't know if it's a good or bad thing with Joshua because he's kind of been performing around at the same level. In the last fight, he looked good. I don't know if anybody could have got him over Usyk. Usyk just seems like he's just a little too much for him. Seems
Usyk,
like that.
yeah.
Usyk is a great fighter. You know, Anthony can punch, but he don't punch hard enough to knock Usyk out. And Usyk's stamina is superior to his. He can just work at a pace that Anthony can't work at. And Usyk is a mean guy. He's competitive. You know what I mean? So I don't know if anybody could have got him over the Usyk hump. So we got to kind of like see moving forward. But to answer you directly, it is a little bit of a red flag when guys keep changing trainers because you kind of basically nobody says this, but you have a right to leave a trainer, and if the trainer's not performing up to standard, then like any big company, you got a right to get rid of the guy. But when you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trainers you jumping around, a lot of times you're not taking accountability for what went wrong.
Right.
That's and to this day, his best career performances were with Robert McCracken. So, you got to give the guys props. His best win is, I mean, what would you say, Klitschko and White?
I
Well,
think there's no question that it was Klitschko, right? I mean, he went through the fire.
yeah.
Uh,
Maybe Joseph Parker. Maybe considering, he just beat.
Even Joe Parker admitted he wasn't right for that fight, though. Like I'm
Okay.
not going to give that because Joe Parker admits he wasn't ready for that fight.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, whatever it was, his best ones were McCracken. And if my memory serves me correctly, McCracken was in the corner for the Ruiz rematch.
Yes.
So you got to give his guys props. He did good with Anthony Joshua. But we'll see. You got to see. I'm a big fan of Derek James, so I love to see him get the job. And I'm a big fan of Lee Wylie and Ben Davison, so I'm happy that they got the jobs. But that is an issue when the going gets tough. It's a little different when you're beating up on a guy, but when you have to make adjustments, your instincts take over, and that's when those things show up.
So you have been watching fights for years. You're one of the sharpest minds in boxing. So let's put the pressure on you right now. Who are you picking? How does it get done? And why are you picking that person?
I'm going to pick Anthony Joshua. I think sometimes we could live in the moment and we can overrate one performance. And I think Ngannou showed great fighter's instincts. I was really happy to see Mike Tyson be part of his team. I was really happy to see how well he did, but it was still one fight. Maybe that was his night. We know that Fury gets up to 400 pounds. We know Fury has some out of the ring issues. Maybe he didn't take the fight totally serious. I don't know, but I just going by Fury's personality and things like that. Not to discredit Francis, but there's a good chance that Fury didn't, wasn't all the way locked in for the fight. I'm a big believer in film study, and Lee Wylie makes some great film videos. He actually, pointed out a couple of things to me. He may not remember this, but we communicate on Twitter, and he pointed out a couple of things to me about 6 years ago with Julian Williams versus Nathaniel Gallimore. And
Okay.
one of the things he pointed out to me actually worked. It was really interesting. He said Gallimore's favorite punch is a hook, but he has long arms and his hook comes off gangly. And a lot of times they say don't hook with a hooker, but Julian's hook is more short and compact. You can hook with him. And lo and behold, if you watch the 11th round of that fight, I have a photographic memory when somebody tells me something with boxing. I don't know why, but we practice on doing a catch and counter hook. And if you watch the 11th round of that fight, Julian hurt him real bad and almost knocked him out with a hook. So I um I believe in Wylie and Ben Davison, and now that there's film out on Francis Ngannou, I think that they'll make the right adjustments. I think Anthony Joshua probably knows a little bit too much for him. I am scared of Anthony's punch resistance, though. I don't think he has a glass jaw, but I do think that he has trouble recovering when he gets hurt. So I wouldn't rule out, Francis hurting and dropping him, but my safe pick is Anthony Joshua by decision or late stoppage.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, I like AJ too, Brett. I just think he has too much big time experience. And not that Francis doesn't, Francis was a UFC heavyweight champion, which is not easy to do. But that's a different sport. I like to tell people MMA and boxing are similar but different, and they remind me of baseball and softball, right there. And we remember that all those great sluggers was Albert Pujols, A-Rod, and I forget who the other one. I think it was Todd Helton. They all got struck out by that woman from Arizona who was an Olympic pitcher, right? And you would never think that would happen, but she pulled it off, and I think that shows the difference in the two sports. So while I think Francis knows how to win and has proven at the top level, he's prepared. I kind of like AJ too. I think he'll get it done and figure out a way to get his arm raised.
Yep, I agree. He probably just knows a little bit too much, but he got to be careful. That dude's dog strong, and that dude showed a good set. He's been kicked and kneed in the head. He showed a good set of whiskers,
Look
man.
at the size of his neck. I mean, it's massive.
Listen, he took Fury's punches good.
Yes, he
And
did.
I don't think Fury is George Foreman level puncher, but he's still a big guy and he still knocks people out. He ate those shots and he didn't show any effects of them. So uh Joshua got his work cut out for him because he's dealing with a physical specimen. That's what he's dealing with. That's what he's dealing with the kind of guy you wouldn't want to fight in the street.
Yeah. No doubt. Well, Stephen Breadman Edwards, we appreciate you. Always good to talk to you and great to hear your insights on boxing. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Kev. I appreciate you having me.